Hello my friends and welcome back to PhilosoGaming. Today I want to discuss a pretty abstract concept, and that's what makes a narrative game a masterpiece. Now this video is going to be a bit different from my normal scholar-ish philosophy babble, in that I want to talk about the philosophy behind game design, rather than how different kinds of philosophy enter into the world of video games. Now, when I say a narrative game, I mean a video game with narrative, and not just a visual novel without gameplay. There are plenty of games without narrative, but they are less and less common nowadays. Now, a masterpiece in any medium of art is always simple in concept, but nearly impossible to definitively apply to an actual piece of work. Sometimes a masterpiece is recognized because it becomes famous. But usually a masterpiece is recognized for being particularly amazing or noteworthy. Video games offer a particular challenge in that regard because video games must balance so many art forms to achieve this. Programming languages, visual aesthetic, game design, all sorts of things to deliver a fun or engaging experience. And narrative must all be profound and work in harmony to deliver a seamless experience with all those other aspects that go into a game. All those art forms must be a masterpiece for the game to be a masterpiece. Rather than tackle the Herculean task of trying to define a litmus test for all video game masterpieces, or even masterpieces of any given particular form of art that goes into video games, I'm going to limit myself specifically to narrative games and explore what makes them masterpieces. Now with narrative games, there is a unique sort of issue that shows up during a gameplay session called Ludonarrative Dissonance. This is when your actions as a player seem to conflict with who the player character is and/or the story and setting the game takes place in. Ludonarrative dissonance is when you get immersed in a game's story and a game's world, and then, while you're playing, you say, that's weird, and thus your mind is thrust out of the suspension of disbelief and faced to realize how weird and wrong the game actually is compared to reality. However, we sometimes and often forgive that negative point for enjoyment of gameplay. It is my hypothesis that for a narrative game to be a masterpiece, it must minimize ludonarrative dissonance as much as possible. And yet many games that are widely considered a masterpiece are equally famous for their blaring examples of this dissonance. So, to test my hypothesis, I will be looking at a number of games, one by one, to see how it overcame this problem to become a masterpiece. I will be looking at the Tomb Raider reboot, The Last of Us, Dark Souls, Nier, and Skyrim, to see where ludonarrative dissonance plays a role and why it didn't destroy these games. I hope you will join me next week as we try to tackle this problem of what makes a narrative game a masterpiece together. And as always, stay true.